Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the City Guys podcast. Today, we're going to be recapping the last match week against LA Galaxy, and then we're going to go ahead and look forward to the future with some predictions and kind of just talk about the state of the soccer world with the Club World Cup going on too. We'll briefly touch on how the MLS is doing there. So, Varun, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. This was a very entertaining game, I'd have to say. We were both at this game. 3-3 against LA Galaxy. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, this was, I would say, maybe the most entertaining game of the season. At least off the top of my head, I can't remember any game this season being more entertaining or fun to be at. Even though it was a draw, but it was a very evenly matched game. I felt like both teams were kind of at a similar level, and that was reflected in the scoreline. I think a draw did kind of represent how both these teams played, even though it is kind of unfortunate that the final goal that LA Galaxy did score came off of a pretty brutal mistake. Um, City definitely had a chance to win this game, but we also had, some incredible moments of brilliance from Klauss that brought us back here. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the result. We'll take a draw. Yes, LA Galaxy are a bottom tier team. They're kind of the worst team in the league, or at least tied. They might actually be ahead of Montreal now since they got a point from this game.
I
But
think so. I think so.
um, yeah, but this is a game that we went into expecting to win at home against the only team in the West worse than us. You really needed to pick up 3 points here, but by how the game went and the level of competition in this game, I was happy-ish that it ended 3-3. I'm a little disappointed because I felt like City definitely had a chance to win this game, but we also very easily could have lost this game. So I think a point here is acceptable.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like this game, we scored a lot of goals in this game, of course. I mean,
Mhm.
3-3. But the goals that we let in were very preventable goals. I feel like they were just really bad
Mhm.
mistakes from our back line or from our midfield. Especially like I think it was a second goal. I think it was a second goal where no, it might have been the third goal where Jaden Reed kind of just had the
Yeah, it was
slip up mistake, and then yeah, the
yeah.
guy had a easy shot and he scored it on Berkey.
Mhm.
But yeah, I feel like most of those were errors on our end rather than them being brilliant LA Galaxy goals. Which, on the
Yeah.
complete other hand, last week against Portland, that first goal, if you remember the Anthony goal, which was just like an absolute curler, there was nothing we could have really done. I mean, here in this game, those three goals that LA Galaxy scored were very preventable goals. But on the other hand,
Mhm.
we did end up scoring three goals, which I mean, I think we possibly are like very close to like evening out like the past 4 months of how many goals we scored under Melberg in like 3 games. Um, but the biggest story coming out of this game here is we have our first ever St. Louis City hat trick. Joao Klauss, and I think the 100th game for St. Louis City in the club's history,
Mhm.
scored a hat trick to be the first ever player to score a hat trick for the club. I mean, let's talk about this performance here. I mean, he single-handedly saved us. Every single goal is a banger, for in my opinion. Fletcher, what were your thoughts on this absolute masterclass from Klaus?
Yeah, I mean, just getting into the stats real
Yeah,
quick on these Klaus goals. The first one came in the 35th minute, had a .43 xG, so nothing super crazy there. It was a solid but pretty
yeah.
standard goal scored by Klaus on that first one. But these next two were ridiculous. The second one, in the 47th minute, right after halftime, .15 xG. And then the final goal, which came all the way in the 95th minute of the game, .02 xG. That is absolutely insane. And that
Uh,
was a goal completely against the run of play. All the momentum was on LA's side. This was after they had taken the lead off that Jaden Reed error. And it looked like they were going to take all 3 points in this game. So that was a huge, huge goal from Klaus to salvage a point. It kind of, maybe even more importantly, kind of salvage morale because Kind of the story of this game is City. Every time City scored, LA would respond almost immediately. That first City goal came in the 35th minute, and then LA Galaxy responded in the 41st, right before halftime, to tie it up. But then Klauss scored right after halftime, and then the LA Galaxy equalizer came in the 51st minute. So, only 4 minutes after that Klauss goal. So, City only led for, I don't know, do the math there. Not very long in this game, despite scoring 3 goals and having the lead twice. So, it kind of felt like every time City was kind of pulling away, LA Galaxy would get one back. And to be fair to them, I felt like their first 2 goals in this game were actually very solid offensive build-up. Specifically that second goal, I think a lot of people have seen it. It was kind of posted all over the highlight reels on Instagram with that Marco Royce back heel. Still, the defense got caught sleeping there. Kind of, a preventable goal. But, I mean, that back heel pass is ridiculous. You don't expect players to be able to make that. But, a player of Royce's caliber obviously can do that. So that was cool to see. But I just wanted to say, even though like going into this game, we kind of had the mindset that, LA Galaxy, they're the worst team in the league. We're at home. We should hopefully be able to win this game. I do think this LA Galaxy team is a lot better than their record has shown. They've lost a lot of close games, and they've lost a lot of games in the final minute, or not the final minute, but in the final minutes. I believe, I don't remember the stat exactly, but I believe us and Galaxy have the 2 most dropped points from winning positions, especially late in games. Which, I mean, this was another instance of that for Galaxy. They dropped points here. They dropped the lead in the 95th minute. So pretty brutal for them. Although I assume they're okay with getting a point away from home. So I don't know. I don't think this LA Galaxy team is as bad as their record shows. Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries and stuff, and I think their attack is actually pretty solid. They've been very good these past couple of weeks. So I'm not super worried, especially considering the third goal was just a complete one-off error, hopefully, from Jaden Reed. So I actually felt like this was a pretty decent performance from St. Louis City. And even though we didn't win this game, at the very least it was fun to watch, which you can't say for most of the games this year.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you got your money's worth going to this game, of course. But yeah, that Klauss hat trick was generational, actually. I mean, it felt like those last 2 goals that Klauss scored were just absolute rockets straight at the goalie. The goalie had no chance. So they just came at such pace that he couldn't have stopped them. But yeah, let's go into this game. There were some other things that happened in this game that I just wanted to touch on. Conrad Valem being one of those. He subbed on at halftime. And he got subbed off 20 minutes later due to injury. So I'm not sure what that injury was. It might have been concussion. I'm not sure. Would you know?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure either. I don't think they ever came out necessarily and said. He was coming off of that suspension, so he didn't play the last game. My initial thought when I saw it was that it was maybe like a cramp or like heat related thing, because it was very hot at this game. So I kind of thought maybe it had something to do with that. Because it was very weird to see him come on at halftime and then immediately have to come off. Especially because he wasn't coming back from an injury, at least as far as we know. Maybe he got hurt during training or something, but no, he didn't play the last game. He should have been very healthy. But yeah, I don't know if that's, hopefully it's not a long-term thing. Hopefully he'll be back soon, because I think he's been phenomenal this year.
I completely agree.
It definitely was one of the weirdest moments of the game.
Yeah, and then moving on, looking at the rest of our players here, Betcher, I think did have a higher XG than Klauss actually did. It was just a little bit less. He had a 1.27 to Klauss's 1.52. So Yeah, Klauss still scored the hat trick, but Betcher, I thought he had some really great chances at the start of the game. Um,
Yeah,
Notably being that Akil Watts, I don't know where Akil Watts pulled this out of his bag from, but he had that Travella pass outside of the foot, curved around the defense, and went to Betcher's legs, but Betcher could not finish it. He put it straight into the
yeah,
goalie. I was about to say, like, Akil Watts, man, I didn't know you were like that, bro. I did not know you were like that. Absolutely crazy
yeah,
pass.
yeah. Betcher had two phenomenal chances
Yeah,
at the start of this game, and he couldn't bury either of them,
yeah.
which was very unfortunate from him. He's kind of in a little rough patch.
Yeah.
Hasn't been super great this year. But in terms of, I kind of wanted to talk about the Klaus Betcher partnership at the
Hmm.
top, because what we've seen from Critchley so far is it looks like he kind of prefers that partnership of them two playing together in the starting 11. So I kind of just want to get your thoughts on that real quick.
Well, let me ask you this though: Is Betcher starting because Lewin is out and like Valum is currently like? I mean, he was suspended. Valum is now injured. Is that more of the fact that Durkin, Leuven, and Valum are not healthy that Betcher is starting, or is it that Critchley actually prefers the Klaus and Betcher partnership? If you get what I mean.
Um, yeah, because Besher is playing in that midfield role, which is very odd for a player who's a striker.
Yeah,
And I do think a lot of that has to do with the injuries, but I also think there are other players he could have turned to fill that void on our bench. So
yeah,
I think it is interesting that he would put Betcher there.
yeah. I
Usually, obviously, favors more of an attacking lineup, and
mhm.
we have seen that. I mean, we've scored what 6 goals in the last 3 games.
Oh yeah.
So that's almost as much as we had under Melberg in his entire run. So
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Betcher, he's been very unlucky. That's like the biggest thing. I mean, like I've talked about this like almost every single week on this
Mhm.
podcast. Is that our biggest issue here? Is that we cannot finish. If we can finish, we'll score a lot more goals than we currently already do. And I mean, Klaus pretty
Mhm.
much finished everything that he got. He finishes dinner every single time he got it. But Betcher, I feel like he's gotten really unlucky with it. Some of them have been like just bad touches on the ball. Some of them it's just been bad decision making from him. But I
Mhm.
do think that the chances that he is getting are brilliant chances, and I do think that it's just a matter of time until he clicks. And I do think that he will score more in the future from those. I just feel like he's just in a kind of a rough patch right now. So
Mhm.
hopefully he gets out of it, out of this little slump, because he's a phenomenal player and he's very smart. It kind of seems like he's always in that right spot to be able to score a goal, but he just cannot finish it.
Mhm.
So he does everything right except for the finish, but I do feel like he'll get it together. That's my thing.
I think the thing with Betcher, in my opinion, is that he's not necessarily the most talented player. I think whenever he's on the ball, he doesn't have the best touch or is the best dribbler in the world.
Mhm.
I do think do agree with your point about him getting into positions. I think that's what he really excels at.
Yeah.
He's very smart. He knows where to be at all times. He knows, where the ball is going to be. He knows how the midfield is going to play it. He obviously, is a very smart player, and I don't know, maybe he's developed a lot of chemistry with some of these guys, but it feels like he's always in the right position. It's just he doesn't have that final, like you said, he's struggling with his finishing, and I
Yeah.
think he just doesn't have that final like finesse. There's a lot of instances. I remember in the Portland game specifically of him getting the ball from a really good pass in a really good attacking position, and then either his first touch was really bad, or he got dispossessed because he couldn't dribble through a guy.
Mhm.
And I think that's honestly kind of his issue,
Yeah.
which is why I don't really like him necessarily playing deeper. I think it's a little weird
Mhm.
for him to be playing kind of in the midfield because I
Yeah.
don't think he necessarily has the skill or the finesse to be doing that.
Uh-huh.
If anything, I think Laos should be playing further back and Becher should be in front of him. But I do think their partnership, obviously, it's very reminiscent of the Klaus Giacchini partnership. back in that first season, which
Mhm.
was incredibly successful.
For real.
And I wonder if that's kind of what Critchley has in mind or is trying to build.
Yeah.
Because we've seen Betcher most of this season as kind of that super sub. And it's kind of been a joke in the St. Louis City community that whenever Betcher comes on, that's usually when we collapse and
Yeah.
concede a bunch of goals.
Yeah.
His plus minus is something crazy awful, like minus 10 or something like
Yeah.
that. But I don't know. I think when him and Klaus are on the pitch together, I honestly think they play better off of each other than having them, play independently as a nine, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think him and Klaus obviously have some chemistry, and they are like. It seems like they are actually like good buddies. Like they are on vacation together right now.
Yeah.
I saw that on Instagram earlier today. So I don't know. I think maybe that's something to watch for the future. Because if we can get back to that Klaus Giacchini way of kind of having Klaus being the hold up striker and then having a guy he could play it off
Yeah.
to,
Yep.
like Betcher, that could work wonders.
I completely agree. Moving on, I want to talk about Critchley here. I mean, the team has been very, very good in my opinion ever since he took over. I feel like that Portland game last week we can chalk it up to
Mm.
just some bad decisions from the team, and then just the heat was just horrible for both teams. Both teams were not in it last week, but this game we still have the issues where we kind of concede in inopportune moments, but the team is finally scoring goals. And I feel like the biggest
Mhm.
like benefiter, I guess, from this is Klaus, of course. And you really saw it. Like Critchley has really gotten to these guys. Klaus on that last goal, I don't know if you saw it when he scored it. He immediately ran to Critchley and the bench, and he literally like climbed up onto like Critchley's like arms. Um, After that goal. So you can see how much it means to him. And Critchley has done wonders to Klaus, man. I mean, under Melberg, it kind of felt like Klaus is just rotting away, you know? He was playing
Mhm.
games. You saw the flashes of like Klaus where he kind of like had a really good ball. He was kind of playing it through the
Mhm.
middle. It kind of played a little bit deep. A couple good shots here and there, but nothing really came out of it. Every week I was like, this is Klaus's week. He's going to score. He's going to score. And then it finally happened in that Columbus game, but it was only like one goal. I think he scored what? 3 goals total under Melberg. I think one in
Yeah.
MLS and 2 in the Open Cup. So,
Yep. Yep.
I mean, Klaus has now scored 4 goals in 3 games under Critchley.
Yeah.
So, and even like, yeah. I mean, I don't know how well I don't remember how well Klaus played last week. Actually,
He did have that pretty bad. He was part of that awful miss.
oh, what? Yeah, we had the 3
So
shots. Yeah,
he could have easily had 5 in the last
yeah,
3.
yeah, but yeah, Klaus had an amazing game this game, and yeah, it really seems
Mm.
like Critchley really has gotten to these guys. These guys are very supportive of him, and the biggest thing I want to talk about Critchley is that he's bringing back the old St. Louis City mentality of high press, which
Yeah.
these players are very suited for. You can clearly
Mhm.
see Klaus going after every single ball. He's not letting anything slide. He's always pressing. Pompeyu's
Mhm.
pressing. Hartel is pressing. Betcher is pressing. All these guys all the attackers are now pressing. Um, which is something that Melberg did not really prefer. He preferred the low block. The second you lose the ball, everybody comes back, 10 in the back.
Mhm.
Which is not the St. Louis City way, I guess. All these players are more suited for a high pressing gegenpress role, a game style. So I'm really glad that Critchley is here. He's a pretty great interim manager so far. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit more pessimistic because I do like. Obviously, the results have been better
Yeah,
these last few weeks. 4 points in 3 games. I mean, that's a lot better than what we were at beforehand. So I do think there has been a lot of improvement. But I do think with Critchley, there is still. Um, I still want to see like what his style and like what his long plan is here. Um, because we haven't really seen that yet, and a lot of that's been due to the injuries, especially in the midfield. We have not seen his preferred midfielder, or
hmm
the ideal midfield out there.
yeah,
So we'll have to see how we play when those guys come back. But I do like the return to the pressing style. It's not necessarily the all-out press that we had like under Carnell, but it's very similar to like what we had under Hackworth, where whenever guys lose the ball, it's a very heavy press, and then it's kind of a fallback if they can't gain the ball immediately after, which I think makes sense, because I think under Carnell we saw the downsides of the super all out press,
Yeah.
where we were usually really good in the first half and then we kind of fall apart in the second half because our guys were tired, and our substitutes weren't very great. We didn't have a ton of depth that first year, and I still think our depth is kind of an issue, which I kind of wanted to touch on as well.
Yeah.
Were the substitutes in this game. Obviously, we talked about Frolum, who didn't really do anything because he got hurt like immediately after coming on. But the substitutes in this game, Vollum was the first in the 46th minute. He replaced Morales, who had kind of a stinker out there, I'm not going to lie.
Yep.
But we had Zielinski in the 61st minute, who replaced Totland. And I actually thought that
I like
Zielinski, I think he's been one of the standout performers this season.
Yeah.
He was a guy who was drafted as part of the MLS draft. I believe he's from New Jersey. And he's been very good for St. Louis City, especially for an MLS draft pick, because most of the time those guys don't ever play. They're kind of meaningless. But Zielinski coming in and actually making a mark on this team, because I actually thought when he totally kind of struggled when he was in this first half. He was kind of getting cooked a little bit by LA Galaxy's wingers.
Yeah.
And I thought when Zielinski came in, he actually played a little bit better than Totland did. And I think with Zielinski, he offers a lot going forward as well. Very similar player profile to Totland, but Zielinski's been phenomenal when he's come in. I think he's one of our stronger subs.
Yeah.
And I think that's really inspiring going forward, because that adds a lot of depth that we need with our defense.
Yeah.
And then the other subs were Cedric Teuscher in the 61st minute, didn't really do too much.
Yeah.
And Jake Girdwood-Reich in the 66th minute, I was kind of surprised he didn't get the start, seeing as we are having so many injuries in the midfield, and he is a CDM. That is his, he plays center back too, but CDM seems to be his natural position. So this seemed kind of like an easy game for him to start in, given how many guys we were missing in the midfield. But he came off the bench here.
I thought he had a pretty good
remember
game.
him. Yeah, I don't remember him doing too much, but I'm looking at FOTMOB here. He did have the highest rating out of all of our substitutes,
Really?
so he must have done a little bit. Yeah, he who did he replace? He replaced. Who did he replace actually?
He replaced Valum when he got injured.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. So he honestly, Girdwood-Reich might not have even came into this game if Fulham didn't get hurt.
I don't think so.
So that's kind of surprising to me, because that was a guy who we spent a lot of money to go out and get last summer. It was a very big signing, and it was kind of deemed as one of the future cornerstones of this team. And he just has not played a ton at all since coming to City. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, but even when he's been healthy, he's played every now and then, but he really hasn't made a ton of an impact. So he's one of those guys that I do feel like hopefully under Critchley we could see some improvement from, because he's a guy that has so much potential. I feel like this is a guy that could be like a very, very quality player for a long time, because he is very young.
Yeah.
But I think we just got to unlock that out of him and develop him a little bit more, because I think we haven't really seen that from him so far. And then the final sub was Jean De Silva in the 90th minute. He was subbed on after LA Galaxy scored their third goal as kind of a desperation sub. I think he replaced Baumgartel, or one of the center backs, and he had the very final chance of this game. He had a nice little run. It was a St. Louis City counterattack, I believe, off like a corner or something from LA Galaxy, where Celio played him through. He had a one-on-one with a LA Galaxy defender, and he actually nutmegged him, and then he went down in the box trying to draw a penalty, and did not get it. which is very frustrating to me because he had this defender completely beat, and there was no reason he had to go down there. Like, yes, I get it. You're trying to draw the penalty, and there might have been contact there, although I think it was probably pretty soft. But you had him beat. You were in front of him. If you just stay on your feet there, you got a one-on-one with the keeper to potentially win the game. That to me was kind of the frustrating part of it.
Yeah.
Very frustrating game, and I think what we see from Jean De Silva, he is obviously super skillful. He's amazing when he's on the ball. Super athletic, super skilled. Um, just a really talented player, but
The
I don't know. I
decisions.
feel like
Yeah.
his awareness and his decision making has cost us a lot this year. Obviously, he cost us a potential chance to win the game there. And I remember the Minnesota United U.S. Cup game where he came on and then like had 5 turnovers immediately because he kept trying to do no look passes and back heels. And it's just a disaster sometimes with him. So again, that's another player that I think he has the skill, he has the talent, he just needs to be coached a little bit more. So that's another player that I think under Critchley, with some specific care and development, I think could really turn out to be a really, really phenomenal player for City. But at the moment, I think he's just not there yet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like he's a very frustrating player to watch sometimes because you know he's got the skills,
Hmm.
he's got the talent, but
Yeah.
sometimes his decision making is just not there. But yeah, I really do hope that he develops much better under Critchley. And I mean, moving on, while we're on the topic of depth players, I guess in a way, they're saying this is completely unrelated to the game, but completely relevant to St. Louis City. Giannis Horn is confirmed to be
Hmm.
leaving St. Louis City. He's going back home to Germany. He'll be going back to Nuremberg, I think, because
Yeah.
they loaned him out to us. But yeah, so St. Louis City's not exercising that buy clause or whatever for Giannis Horn, so he will be going back home. So we will be down a left back, or yeah, like a left back, center back type of player.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that St. Louis City will go out onto the market in the summer to get a player of that type of role, or do you think they're going to stick with like Jaden Reed or possibly Akil Watts back at the left back role? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Um, yeah, obviously Giannis Horn was, it's not like a huge loss, seeing as we do have Jaden Reed there, who I do like quite a
Uh
bit.
huh.
But Giannis Horn was a very solid player, especially defensively for St. Louis City. So it is a loss for sure. And I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate that we have kind of a surplus of right backs with Totland and Zelensky and Watts. And maybe you could flex like Zelensky or Watts over to left back to kind of fill in that role. But right now, I guess maybe like Kyle Hebert would be the backup left back, which is can't play with his left foot at all.
Yeah, I like him
So
more as a CB.
right, I agree. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see what City does. I would assume, I don't know, maybe I'm not super familiar. Maybe there's an academy player or someone at left back who could come up, maybe get a chance. But obviously, Jaden Reed, this is a huge opportunity for him because he is the de facto starter now at this point. And yes, he did have a stinker against LA Galaxy. He did cost us the win,
Mhm.
but I do like Jaden Reed a lot, especially what he adds to the attacking side of things. And I do think he is also a very solid defender. Not as great as Giannis Horn was. You do lose a little bit of that defensive ability when you have Reed out there instead of Horn, but definitely makes up with it with his attacking ability. Him and Celio on that left flank is just such a great partnership.
Yeah.
They make phenomenal overlapping runs with each other. Um,
Uh
so I do think we'll be fine as long as Jaden Reed doesn't go down, which is a big if because he has been injured quite a bit during his career. So I wouldn't be shocked if City went into the market, maybe got a backup left back or a cheap left back
Yeah,
to add a little bit of depth, because I do think if Jaden Reed does go down, then it gets into pretty scary territory with Kyle Hebert having to play left back or maybe switching Watts over there or
yeah.
something. But I don't think it's a huge loss. Like I don't think it's you know going to be like a huge impact on the team.
Yeah. Just looking at St. Louis City Two's roster. I was looking at like left back options. So you have first Tyson Pierce, who's 17. He has gotten
Yeah,
some minutes for the first team, I think. Maybe like one or two games where he's kind of like subbed on like late. But he has played, he's primarily like a right back, but he has played left back under City 2, which Critchley probably knows him very well, considering he played at City 2, of course. Another
hmm
guy, Cam Silly, he's kind of like, he's like 24-ish, 25-ish. He's an actual left back, so he could also be a left back option if we were to promote him. And then, yeah, of course, Jaden Reed, who played for City 2 before he got promoted. So I think the biggest, maybe Tyson Pierce gets the call up from Critchley. I think that Critchley
hmm
probably trusts him. Tyson Pierce, of course, has gotten some caps with the it's like U18 U.S. national team. So this guy's
hmm
good. He's a pretty good player. Um, but yeah, I do think that we might in the transfer window when the transfer window opens up. I think in a couple days. Uh, I think we will try to get possibly like a maybe like a lower profile left back, somebody who's very cheap.
hmm
Nothing too serious unless we somehow land like a big name guy from like Germany. I don't know, which I don't really see happening. But kind of moving off of that, do you think that there are like any other positions that St. Louis City should fill, or that you think St. Louis City will fill in this upcoming transfer window?
Um, I would expect St. Louis City to be pretty quiet. Outside
Yeah,
of maybe moving for a potential left back, I don't really suspect there's going to be any major moves from St. Louis City. That being buying or selling,
hmm,
because I think it's important right now to figure out what we have with the players we got
yeah,
right now. Because I do think, even though like we do have kind of an outside chance at maybe making a run and potentially sneaking into the playoffs, this season is becoming more and more of a wash as every week passes. So I feel like at this point, the goals for St. Louis City should be to find out the quality of the players that we have now and find the weak spots and what we need to fix in the offseason, and also find out if David Critchley is a capable manager, because I do think in hindsight. In hindsight, honestly, firing Carnell was a mistake, especially with what's going on now, and then especially with Hackworth. I think um, he showed enough where I would have been okay with him
yeah,
getting the full time role, especially with what happened with Melberg after. I think kind of as every week passes, and we do still have an outside shot at maybe making the playoffs and potentially going on a run. It does seem more and more like this season is kind of a wash. So I think the important thing right now is, instead of maybe going into the transfer market and making a ton of changes, is to kind of evaluate the players that we have now, give them the rest of the season under Critchley, to see what we have and see what are the weak spots and where we need to improve and changes we need to make in the off season. And also, it's important to see if Critchley is capable as a manager, because I think this ownership group and management has to be looking right now at the coaching moves that we've made in the past, and with the power of hindsight, um, you know, firing Carnell was probably a mistake, especially considering how he's doing right now with Philadelphia. And then also, I think with Hackworth, I think for me he did enough to where I would have been okay with him getting the full time manager job, especially considering what happened with Melberg immediately after. I think Hackworth would have done a much better job of this year than Melberg did. So I really do think that management really does want to keep Critchley around as long as he shows that he's competent enough and that this team is capable of winning games. So I think those are the two most important things for this final half of the season here.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're gonna make a ton of changes in the transfer market.
You know, one thing though, like, I mean, there are a lot of players whose contracts are going to be running out at the end of the season. Of course, being Berkey, I think he does have an option for another year.
Mm-hmm.
So that would probably mean that Ben Loon, if Berkey does decide to go to Chicago or wherever he ends up, because I do know that Chicago was inquiring about him because his wife, of course, does live in Chicago, work in Chicago. So if Berkey was to either go home, back to Switzerland, or either go to Chicago or anywhere else, Ben Lute, I feel like, would get promoted, of course. So maybe we might try to get another backup keeper. Because we do have Christian Olivares, who I think is a decent backup, a third keeper, but I do think to see that same City might try to either sign first team keeper or a third or like a more like a second string keeper to go behind Lute, because I do think that Lute is good enough to start. But yeah, I do think that currently we should be looking at players that we want to renew. Because a lot of players do have options to stay the extra couple of years, like a year or two. I do think that we probably are going to get rid of Blom because he is coming back from loan at the end of June, I think. So we'll probably get rid of him. So I think that this is a very pivotal year in St. Louis City, because this will probably decide the future of this team. Just because of all the players, a lot of players are having their contracts end here and there. You have to think about exercising those extra, what do you call it, like the extra year clauses and stuff.
Yeah.
So I do think that also Klauss, I think, being in this red hot form, if he keeps this on, I do think that we might offer him a bigger contract going into 2026. I think that this is a huge moment for Klauss. Hartel as well. I think Hartel is a very like a cornerstone of this team now. Teuscher as well. Leuven, I think that we will probably have to evaluate him more. I do think that Leuven is a very good player, but I think that the team will probably be evaluating him. But that's just my take. Was there anything else you want to talk about this team, San Luis City in general, or anything?
No, not particularly. I just kind of wanted to touch on the Club World Cup briefly, because it's the first round of games still going on.
The first round just ended today. So
so every team has played at least once, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought this was kind of relevant, seeing as there's some MLS teams competing in this.
Yes.
But just briefly, what have been your thoughts and takeaways from this Club World Cup so far? Are you enjoying it or no?
Yes. As a neutral, like if I was going into this as a neutral, I mean, I support Real Madrid, but going like as an overall thing, I did think that this is a very Mickey Mouse tournament. That's my number one thing about this tournament, is that it should not exist. It's a money grab. I know that Seattle players would agree with me if I say this. It is a money grab. It's a cash grab. This tournament should not exist. It should not exist in the U.S. If you're gonna do it somewhere else other than the U.S. Going with all our political tensions and stuff that's going on, like ICE and immigration and all that. So we're not gonna get into that, but yeah, the U.S. is just not the most ideal of places to host a tournament like this, especially that you're probably going to get a lot of people from other countries to come and watch their teams, and if they're seeing what's going on in the news and stuff, they're probably not going to, they're being less inclined to come over here and watch it. But I do understand that they're trying to grow the sport of soccer, football in the U.S., so I see it, but also it's just the players have had a long season in Europe. You have players coming off the European Championships with the Champions League, Conference League, Europa League, and then even the Nations League was literally like last week. And now you have all these players coming back to play this tournament like 5 days later. So
yeah,
I don't like that. But as an individual tournament, I think it's been entertaining at least. We have football to watch in what probably would be like a very boring month of June, watching the U.S. national team get absolutely touched every week in and out. So in the Gold Cup, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's a cool thing, I guess. But I'm not a big
yeah.
supporter of it.
I'd have to agree. I have watched probably around half the games,
Yeah,
but I haven't been like super keeping up with it. I'll watch the games if I have like nothing going on, or if I'm bored, I can just throw one on in the background. But from what I've seen, I I think it's cool for some of the maybe smaller teams. But I mean, like seeing the Brazilian teams and all their fans, who really did come and support their teams, um, like that's pretty cool to see. Um, and I feel like a lot of those teams, like the teams from Brazil, obviously, what was the Mexican Monterrey got a draw against Inter. That was a
Monterrey,
crazy result.
Sergio
Um,
Ramos, bro.
yeah, Sergio Ramos. I feel like those teams, you could tell that this actually does mean a lot to them, and they are putting everything they have into this tournament because it is a very big deal for them and for their fans, and competing against some of the top European teams.
Yeah,
I did watch the Dortmund game against Fluminense,
yeah,
which I felt like was very evident of that, where Dortmund was kind of half-assing it, kind of treating it like a preseason friendly at times.
yeah,
And Fluminense was really going for it. They were by far the better team in that game. Probably should have won it, but they couldn't convert their chances. So I feel like that's kind of been the story of the Club World Cup so far.
yeah. I
Is
completely
the
agree.
big European teams aren't taking it super seriously. Probably the biggest game so far was the PSG Atletico Madrid game, which was a complete disaster. I mean, it was a 4-0 whopping by PSG, and that game looked like a friendly. Like
uh,
that had so much friendly vibes. It was terrible. But
yeah,
I feel like some of the opening game, the Inter Miami Ale game,
it was
which
a
ended up being a 0-0 draw.
it's a good
That was a
game. It was
really
a good
good
game.
game. Could have gone either way. You saw a penalty save,
Yeah,
um, and then you also saw Lionel Messi almost score a Puskas worthy goal to win the
yeah, oh yeah,
game.
yeah,
So yeah, I feel like some of the smaller teams in this tournament, I think it's cool to see them do well, and really compete and try for it. And it's also cool to see their fan bases really take this seriously.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, the European teams, not so much. And I do feel like at the end of the day, we'll see as it goes on. I think once we get to the knockout rounds, I think a lot of them will take it more seriously. But so far in the group stage, I'd have to say this tournament's definitely been a disappointment, um,
Oh yeah,
just with the quality and with the attendance and kind of the hype around it.
yeah. I think the biggest thing coming out of this is that those smaller teams will get a lot more recognition. Like even
Hmm.
like Auckland City, who are coming into this the worst team in the competition because they are the only amateur team going to the competition, but their players are getting a lot of publicity.
Hmm.
They're getting a lot of recognition for this. So I feel like even like maybe not Auckland City, but like players from smaller clubs, maybe like Wydad FC, like the team from Casablanca. If there are some standout players, this could be like their shot to kind of come out into the spotlight, and then maybe some other
Yeah,
teams would like sign them in this new transfer window, or maybe next year. Kind of keep tabs on these guys. So I think that's like a big benefactor of this. Um, but yeah, some of the games have been very entertaining. Don't get me wrong. I still don't the Boca Juniors Benfica game I think was a standout game
yeah,
as an
yeah,
absolute war zone. It's just people going at it. So one thing I do want to mention, I really hope that Boca Juniors and River Plate both play each other in the knockout stages because I don't think the
yeah.
stadium would exist if that game actually happened.
That'd be
Both, yeah,
insane.
both of their fans have come out like full force for this too. Like I've seen a lot of Argentinian fans in these. Boca Juniors took over a Walmart. Like it was that like it was there's some
Yeah,
crazy scenes coming out of this. So this just kind of like it might be like a kind of a taste for the actual World Cup next year, where you're gonna see all these South American fans kind of like come in,
Mhm.
and yeah, like I feel like these are some of like the more like bigger like scenes coming out of this. Like I guess like the fans are like the biggest thing here. Even like the team from Japan, the Urawa Red Diamonds, they had a
Yeah,
pretty
they had a ton of
substantial,
fans.
yeah, they had a lot of
Mhm.
fans. Even like what do you call it? The Mom Lodi versus the Mom Lodi Sundowns versus Ulsan, like the South Korean versus South African team. There was like
Yeah,
100 people there at the start of the game, but I think that the Mom Lodi fans came in like in the middle of the game, and there was at least like 500 to 1,000 of them in like their supporter section.
it's
So
crazy.
seeing all those guys come all the way from South Africa is absolutely crazy to support their team. So I feel like the World Cup next year will have a lot more of that. Hoping that our
Mhm.
immigration, like all that stuff, like gets sorted out, so a lot of people will actually be able to come here, to watch these
Yeah.
games. But yeah, I think that this is still a Mickey Mouse tournament, but there are some highlights coming out of these that I really do like seeing. But do you want to talk about the MLS teams in here? We have three: LAFC, Seattle, and Inter Miami. So, what are your thoughts about these teams here so far after the first round of games have been played?
I will say they've done better than I've expected, to be honest. Even though none of them have actually won a game. Inter Miami, very easily could have won that game against Al
Yeah,
Ali. They struggled a lot in that first half, but they were definitely the better team in that second half. Almost won it at the end. I do think out of the three, they're
Seattle.
definitely the most likely to make it to the knockouts because I do think they have the most favorable group.
Uh huh.
Seattle actually played really well against Botafogo. They should have won that game. They were the much better team. They kind of got unlucky with that result, but let's be real, they are absolutely cooked. Going up against PSG and Atletico, they're probably well, I don't know. Atletico seems pretty ass, so maybe they'll get a win against them, but
Yeah.
no chance against PSG. And then LAFC actually played pretty solid. I felt like against Chelsea, they had a couple chances. A 2-0 loss against one of the best teams in Europe, I don't think is a terrible result for them.
Yeah. I,
So they have a chance of making it through as well. I do think
the biggest issue is
Inter
that
Miami.
yeah, the biggest issue for
Oh,
that
go
would
ahead.
be that Flamengo's in their group. I do think that
Yeah.
Chelsea was kind of half-assing that game.
Mhm.
But Flamengo will not be against LAFC, so that'd be the biggest issue for that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they'd have to get a result against Flamengo, but it's not an impossible task for
yeah,
LAFC. I don't think.
yeah, and then Inter Miami, you were saying, yeah,
Inter Miami, they do have Palmeiras and Porto in their group, so two very solid teams. But those aren't impossible games either. They really needed to get a win against Al Ali. That would
yeah,
have put them in a really good spot. But currently, as it stands, all four of those teams are tied on 1 point.
single
So
goal.
that, yeah, no, not a single goal has been scored. So in that group, which is crazy, but that group is wide open right now. I do think Inter Miami is probably the third best team in that group, so they'd have to get an upset over either Porto or Palmeiras. But you never know. I think out of the three, they definitely have the best shot of making it through. But yeah, it would be kind of sad if not a single MLS team made it to the knockout stage in a tournament held in the U.S. But I do think they all, I wasn't really expecting any of them to make it out. I think any of them making it out would have been kind of a surprise.
Yeah,
So I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping one of them could maybe pull off an upset. Like it would be crazy if Seattle beat like Atletico or something. But
yeah,
I don't think it's been terrible from the MLS.
yeah. I completely agree. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't think that any of these. Yeah, Seattle having to play PSG and Atletico is really, really harsh on them.
Hmm.
Yeah, Inter Miami, I think would have the great. Yeah, as you said, the Inter Miami would probably have the biggest chance of making it through.
Hmm.
Unless LAFC somehow pulls out a result against Flamengo or Esperance de Tunis or whatever. Um, but yeah, I think that this has been at least making it to this competition. I guess the MLS teams have kind of made a name for themselves here. That's the biggest thing. But other than that,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think a lot of people expect the MLS teams to just get completely played off the pitch, and that hasn't happened so far. So
yeah,
I gotta be happy with that. Hopefully, that doesn't happen. Although with PSG versus Seattle, I am very worried that that could be like a 6-0, 7-0 game. But
yeah.
we'll
That's not gonna
see.
be good. Um, but yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about the Club World Cup.
No,
Do you want to?
I think
What's up?
I'll just say I do hope that as we get further, outside the group stage, that maybe the intensity picks up a little bit. But however, how this inaugural tournament is perceived and how the players and the fans treat it is going to determine how this competition is treated in the future. If it's going to be taken seriously or if it's going to be kind of treated like a preseason trophy, which is kind of what it seems like that's going towards right now, is more of like a preseason kind of Mickey Mouse trophy than anything serious, which is definitely not what FIFA wants.
Yeah,
So I think that's going to be the most interesting thing going forward. Final between like PSG and Bayern Munich, and both teams, play with a ton of intensity and really go for it and try and win it. Then maybe this will be taken seriously in the future, but we'll see.
yeah. I think that the biggest like I think that most like these bigger teams already think that they'll make it through anyways, so they're probably not trying as
Yeah,
much. I mean, I know Bayern went all out on Auckland City and they had no remorse, which I mean I do respect them for that, just because like yeah, don't make the opponent kind of feel like they're being I don't know like mercied, I guess, in a way. Um,
hmm
if Auckland City came out all this way, I think they're expecting that Bayern actually plays them and not just like sits back and whatever. But I think that most of these bigger teams already think that they're gonna make it through, so they're probably not playing as hard because I guess they're saving their energy and strength after these long
yeah,
European seasons to play in the knockout stages. Because there is a lot of money on the line here. I think the winner gets what like
hmm
200 million ish or something.
something
It's
ridiculous.
yeah,
More than
top
that you get from
three.
winning the championship.
Yeah, top three, I think gets a lot of money. So if you finish at least top three or even top five, I think you'll get a lot of money. So I think that like these big teams like Bayern, Man City, Real Madrid, PSG, all these teams want that money. So for this upcoming transfer window, of course. So
Which,
um,
yeah,
yeah, so I feel like later on we're probably gonna see it pick it up, but right now it's kind of a snooze fest.
which it's kind of crazy that they have so much money on the line because with how bad the ticket sales and attendance has been, and I feel like at least here in the U.S., like you have to watch the games through DAZN, which is like fine. I mean, I'm glad it's free, but it's
Yeah,
like it's not through like a big provider like
absolutely.
HBO or like Fox or ESPN or anything. Like I can't imagine that FIFA's making that much money on this, at least
Yeah.
comparatively to what they would have thought. So it's kind of crazy that the prize pool is that much.
Also, it's crazy to me that they are considering for 2029, like 4 years from now, the next Club World Cup, to do it again in the US, which I don't really understand it because, like, people are obviously not going to show up again. I'd say do it, like, in, like, Brazil or, like,
Yeah,
you
I
can do it
mean,
somewhere else,
yeah.
not a
I mean, in
repeat.
the U.S., you do have the massive stadiums here in the
Yeah.
U.S., and it's also, you know, the U.S. is also, a very wealthy country. You can charge more for tickets. At least that's what they thought when they set the ticket prices,
Mm,
because they were initially like hundreds of dollars just to go to some of these group stage games, and then they dropped them to like some of them as below $20, which is insane. But I think part of this is they really want to break into that U.S. market. Obviously, they've been trying that for so long now to varying degrees of success. Um, so they really want American fans. They want to build huge fan bases in the U.S. I know they've been talking about doing some crazy stuff with like I want to say it was La Liga that was proposing playing like a couple games in the U.S. like regular season La Liga games, which is ridiculous. Like
that's
imagine El
insane.
Clasico
That's
in
nah,
Dallas, Texas, or something like that.
that's
But
crazy.
FIFA is twerking for the U.S., bro. They
Yeah,
really want that American money. Because I mean, it makes sense. There's so much money to be made from the U.S. It's definitely the most valuable market if you could break into it. But I don't know. I have to imagine they'd be rethinking that after seeing how it's gone so far.
Yeah, I feel like the build up for like the soccer like football culture here is still going to be very slow. It'll take a while for it to kind
Mhm.
of be really big here, of course. So it is a really hard task, but yeah, they're meat riding the hell out of the U.S. right now. So we'll have to see. Um,
Yeah.
but just quickly, I just wanted to mention, completely unrelated to Club World Cup, going back to St. Louis City. We do play Orlando. Just a quick, what are your thoughts about this game coming up in, I don't know, like 8 days, like a week from now? What are your quick thoughts about Orlando? Do you think?
Um,
I think they are a decent team. Let me look at them real quick.
they are coming
Orlando,
off of a win.
they are Eastern.
They're fifth in the
Orlando's
East.
fifth. Yeah, 30 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are a good team.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
it's a tough game. I think it's at home.
yeah,
It's at home though.
it's at home against somewhere. Okay. I mean, I don't know. It's a pretty tough team, but we do play a lot better at home. So it's going to be another interesting matchup. I'm just kind of looking through Orlando. I'm not too familiar with them, if I'm being
I don't think
completely honest.
we've played them like
It
once.
seems like they've scored. Yeah, it seems like they've scored a decent amount of goals. They've scored 32 goals this year, which is more than most teams, and conceded 22. So they have a plus 10, which is actually very solid. It's the third highest in the East. So
This
they
is
actually are
this is a good team.
a better team than their record shows, it
Well,
seems like.
they also smashed Inter Miami, if you remember earlier this year. Is that like the
Ouch.
3-0, 4-0 or something like that? They
Yeah.
completely killed Inter Miami. So this is a good team. This is a very good team.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a tough task, but again, I'm at this point, like, I'm not as obviously I want to win games, like I want to see results, but I'm more focused on how the team plays. If we could play, solidly, if we could show improvement under Critchley, and if guys like Klaus and Hardell continue to excel with this squad, I'll be happy. But honestly, it's coming off of a long break, so maybe we can get some of the guys that are currently out, like Leuven, to come back healthy. But I would say this is probably at best maybe a draw, but it's going to be a very tough game.
Yeah. If I'm going for a score prediction here, I'm going to be less optimistic this time. I think a 2-0 loss for St. Louis City.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I'll say a draw.
Yeah.
I'll say a 2-2 draw. Because
Interesting.
I do think City have shown a lot on the attack. We're willing to give a little bit more space to the opposing team's counters, but we are putting a lot more balls in the box, and we're creating a lot more chances now than we were under Melberg. So I do think we will be able to score. Hopefully, um, I do think a 2-2 draw is probably the best case scenario for this team. I don't think
Yeah.
we'll be able to win this game, but a draw at home
It's a
against a
tough
really good
game.
team, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a very tough game, and yeah, I know I said this last week where we had to kind of it's a must-win game against LA Galaxy. I feel like if we at least have a good team performance, I'd be happy with whatever the
Hmm.
outcome is at least.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. No. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I know this was a very long episode for the City Guys podcast, but yeah, we have kind of like a long break between games, so we have nothing else to talk about. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully after a win at home versus Orlando City, but yeah, we'll see you guys next week.